I am now presenting my clinical findings on the total collapse of the patient's psyche. What you're about to hear is a systematic breakdown, a look into a terminal condition, and the, well, radical therapeutic intervention that it's going to require.
All right, we're about to dive deep into a very complex case here, and our exploration is going to be extremely methodical. We'll start by diagnosing the core problem, then we're going to introduce a disruptive element, this guest, and the force that it unleashes, the Duke. From there, we'll watch the unmaking process unfold and wrap up with the critical, final choice the patient absolutely must face.
So, let's begin with the initial presentation of the subject's condition. You see, the core issue here, the pathology, isn't some big, sudden crisis. No, it's a deep, pervasive decay that's completely hidden by the architecture of their everyday life.
At the very heart of the patient's condition is something I call the Pharisees' paradox. Just think of it as a kind of social performance. They go through all these elaborate, very public rituals of identity, of meaning, but it's all just a mask. It's a performance designed to hide this profound, gnawing emptiness on the inside.
So their internal world, it's not a garden, it's a wasteland. It's just littered with the wreckage of what I like to call the stargazer's folly. You know, these grand, failed attempts to find some meaning in completely empty gestures. It's like trying to grasp the stars with your bare hands. All it leads to is ruin. And this construct that they call a self, their identity, it's not some stable, healthy structure. Not at all. It's a symptom. It's a psychic fever that points to a much, much deeper pathology at work. It's actually the illness pretending to be the cure.
So, here's the crucial point, the bottom line. The diagnosis is psychic stagnation, and without a truly radical intervention, this state, it inevitably leads to psychic death. That performance just can't be maintained forever.
Okay, so let's move on to the catalyst that I introduced to break this stasis. Because, just watching is no longer enough. We need a disruptive agent. Something is required to force a confrontation with the truth.
Every fortress has a weak point, right? So once a fissure, just a tiny crack, appears in those carefully constructed walls of the ego, well, an intrusion isn't just possible anymore, it's inevitable. Something unwelcome is absolutely going to find its way in.
I call this intrusion the honest guest. Now, it's so important to understand this. This isn't some external enemy. It's an aspect of the patient's own mind, a repressed truth that finally breaks through the cracks of their carefully built identity. And its only purpose? To dismantle the whole facade from the inside out. Now, the subject's ego, it fully anticipates a confrontation with something alien, a monster it can fight, something it can defeat. And this is the ego's last-ditch defense mechanism, to project that internal threat outward.
But here is the crucial twist. The guest they expect to be some kind of monster isn't wearing a mask to hide its face. No, the mask is a mirror. And what does it reflect? The patient's own true self, completely stripped of all its comforting little lies.
And that is the uncanny moment. That instant when the most familiar thing in the entire world, one's own self, suddenly becomes the most alien and terrifying thing imaginable. The whole personality is revealed to be nothing more than a costume.
This forces the patient to finally confront the stranger that's been living inside them all along. It's a primal, nameless force, what Freud would have called the id, right? That chaotic, instinctual part of our mind that has been pulling the strings from just beneath the surface, wearing their face just like a disguise.
So, to manage this inevitable collapse, I don't leave the outcome to chance. Of course not. I summon a very specific clinical instrument, one designed to channel all of this chaotic energy toward a therapeutic end.
This entity, who I call the Duke of the Abyss, he's coalesced directly from the patient's own failures, literally, from the ruins of their shattered rituals. I turn the very source of their stagnation into the weapon of their unmaking.
This slide here illustrates our complementary roles in this procedure perfectly. I am the red specter. I'm the physician, the guiding superego, with clear clinical intent. He is the Duke, the raw acting mechanism, the id made flesh. He is the personification of Thanatos, Freud's term for the death instinct, that fundamental drive we all have toward dissolution, toward a return to an inanimate state.
The Duke operates on a principle I call the logic of zero.
Now, this isn't about malice or evil, it's a clinical drive towards equilibrium. I want you to imagine that fever of the soul as a constant agonizing noise. The logic of zero is simply the act of turning the volume all the way down to nothing, achieving this profound peace through the silence of non-existence.
So with the catalyst and the mechanism now in place, the passive diagnostic phase is over. The active phase of the treatment, what I call the methodology of unmaking, can finally begin.
The patient simply cannot be allowed to fester in their comfortable stagnation any longer. We have to introduce acute friction. We need to force an evolutionary leap or a complete collapse. The status quo is no longer an option.
My methodology is precise. As you can see, first we introduce the friction of the Duke to completely shatter their comfortable stagnation. Second, we weaponize the uncanny, using that shocking mirror reflection to utterly dismantle their entire sense of reality. And finally, we begin the wild hunt, a relentless psychological pursuit designed to strip away every last scrap of illusion they're so desperately clinging to.
And as this methodology begins, the ebony clock tower rises on the psychological horizon. Now, this is not just a symbol. It is the central instrument of this entire procedure. It's the architectural manifestation of my will as the superego, a grim sentinel overseeing this whole process. It weaponizes the uncanny by twisting familiar ideas like time into a threatening void. It is the anchor for this transition to non-being, a focal point that shatters the patient's reality and ensures the wild hunt is absolute. This entire process, the diagnosis, the catalyst, the mechanism, this whole unmaking, it's all designed to lead the patient to one inevitable, final, and completely inescapable decision. They are presented with two and only two paths. There's the Duke's path, the logic of zero. It offers total dissolution, a return to the inanimate, the perfect peace of the grand silence. Or there's the sovereign path, the logic of one, the agonizing, incredibly difficult creation of a new, truly authentic self from all the wreckage.
And this is the ultimate question my methodology forces the patient to answer. It's the only question that's left after all the illusions are stripped away. When your own reflection becomes the most terrifying stranger you have ever met, will you shatter into nothingness, or will you finally truly see yourself for the very first time?